Hello, friends. Another day, another destiny. This never-ending. No, what's the line from Les Mis? I can't remember. That was the whitest middle-aged guy thing I've ever said. Hi, everybody. I am sitting here with Matt Rosenthal. We're going to have a conversation. That way. We're going to have a conversation about how he is adapting, how his firm is dealing with the madness. But before we do that, as always, I want to share a few resources with you. My brain is down a little bit of a rabbit hole, as I do, about what's going to happen. I was reading a few articles today that said a lot of X will happen, and I find those fascinating. Because I really don't know how anybody knows freaking anything. So we'll talk about that a little bit. First, I wanted to point out, let me share my screen here real quick. I wanted to point out this article, which is about the most useless thing I've ever seen. It is New York State Bar giving advice about how firms should reopen. And it broadly is like, be careful. Thank you, New York Bar. It's telling people to keep people home as much as they can. If they can be effective working from home, have them there. If they do come to the office, don't let them come anywhere near each other. Make sure that they're social distancing and not touching common surfaces, etc., etc. We've seen the same things coming out of the pediatrics recommendations for what people are supposed to do at school. And I'm just like, what the freak are we going to school for? I don't know. Why are we going to offices if that's the environment at offices? I don't know. I don't really know what this kind of advice is supposed to be telling us. I mean, look, if you can do the stuff at home, there's this big question about what is the trade-off? What do you get in a physical space? There's some really good things in physical spaces about, building a common culture and a common vision, especially for people with strategic roles. I can say from experience, it's really hard to be disaggregated and virtual. You really need people brainstorming with Post-it notes in a room for those kinds of roles. Well, in that circumstance, they can't be socially distanced or you've totally lost the point. So either have them at home as long as there's any kind of risk and figure out how to operate that way, or send them to freaking work and have them work. This is not me saying that the virus is fake and blah, blah, blah. That I think all these recommendations to stay away from each other is probably smart. I will say I'm going to be homeschooling my kids next year probably because I just don't want to deal with this madness. So better to just know that it's there and adjust. Relevant to that is this. I got this article. So Bob Ambrogi wrote an article about what this circumstance is definitely going to change. And again, there's a lot of definites, right? There's a lot of, and this is good writing. You should you should assert things with some strength and not be wishy-washy. And so there's a lot of this will definitely happen. The pandemic will forever change law practice. I'm having a really hard time with these things. I saw, again, people, making the claim that divorces are going to explode when everything comes back, right? There's just going to be a ton of divorces. But if you look at past data, that's not backed up in recessions. Economic pressures don't actually tend to increase divorces. Who knows why? I mean, there's a lot in these Pew studies about why that is, that they have a hard time answering it. Is it that people want to wait until assets are worth more before they split? Is it that they can't afford legal counsel and they want it? Is it that they're like, we got to work through this? I don't know. And on that, these people are just, the joke is if they're crammed, if two people who don't like each other are crammed in the same space and have to deal with each other, it's going to make them want to get divorced. To me, it's just as likely to make them have hard conversations that they weren't having before and could actually cause those people to work on their relationship when they wouldn't have before. I mean, logically, you can argue either way. We just don't have the data yet. On this article, obviously, Bob's not talking about divorce, but he's making some claims. Lawyers will no longer see technology as something to be feared. Ha ha, ha 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 ha. I could list off the people who still see technology as something to be feared. Lawyers will no longer see innovation as a threat to the guild. He talks about courts are making permanent changes. You're going to see regulatory reform. Look, this is not popular. It's not cool. I love Bob. You're dealing with, in past, when you saw big seed changes, big cultural seed changes, people died. Lots of people died. World War I happens and you have a huge population turnover. You had, during the Great Depression, you had population turnover. So the change was largely, there wasn't like an overlap. There wasn't that Venn diagram of pre-disaster people and post-disaster people with small overlap. This is a situation where you're going to have the exact same players come back, right? All the exact same human beings with the exact same legal training, the same experience, the same cultural change. All the same stuff will be true after this as was true before this. And if you're telling me that the legal system is going to change, this is a system that has existed since the early 1900s. It survived 2 world wars, countless wars and recessions. I don't know what... I feel like what these things are doing is saying, let's let the events change us. Okay, so we're like leaning this on the events. I'm not saying these aren't changes that will happen or that they're changes that shouldn't happen. I'm saying don't wait for it, right? There's nothing about Corona that makes me feel like this is definitely going to happen. Similarly, this is a piece from Mark Cohen who talks about careers. And specifically talks about the issue of former lawyers, right? That historically there was only one place for people who wanted to do law-like stuff, right? That they went to law school and they became lawyers. I've talked about the article, The End of Law Schools, quite a bit from Rayworthy Campbell, which is really good. The End of Law Schools, check it out. But he talks about this before Corona even started. He said, we keep doing this thing where the only way to serve people in terms of legal issues is to go get your law license and then follow this very prescribed thing. And he was arguing we can't keep doing that. Like it's not meeting demand. The needs of that education are too high relative to the ask, to what the value offering is. We can't have $200,000 jobs, or student loan debt loads for people who are going to go get $60,000 a year jobs. It's just not tied. The supply and the demand are not tied together very well. This article from Mark Cohen talks about that, right? That and again, a lot of this will be, legal knowledge will be a minimum. So go get a year of basic legal knowledge, but people will also learn supply chain stuff and they will also learn project management stuff. And so now you're going to have 10 kinds of roles that happen to have some legal education. I don't know. I don't know why anyone believes this is likely to happen unless somebody makes it happen. This is where it really gets to me. He says most lawyers will engage in a mix of practice and business of law jobs/gigs. Guys, this is a disaster in the economy. This issue of the gig economy is a major problem. And it's because in the American social system, we've tied all kinds of things to employment in terms of where our benefits come from, how wealth is redistributed, how taxes are done. It's all done through employment. And if you're losing that employment relationship, so now I'm a contractor, that is a major cultural shift. And in the early 1900s when we did this, the way it worked was the big bosses had all the power and all the rest of us pre-labor law were just begging for work. We were just eating table scraps. There is a high risk with this. This is really lofty as to what kind of choices and power we're going to have after this. I'm not persuaded unless we go get it, right? That's what the book is largely about, is saying we need to go get it. If we're thinking that what's going to happen is all these big firms and mid-sized firms are going to lay people off and then they're going to go back and hire them in some respectful, appreciative, the worker, the gig worker now has control. If you think those contractors are going to have control, you're just not paying attention to other segments of the economy. So again, I would like for this stuff to happen. I hope that it works out. I'm seeing this maybe as self-fulfilling prophecy stuff. I love Bob. I love Jordan Furlong, who he quotes. I want them to be right, but it's going to be up to us making freaking decisions because we are the difference, right? We're the ones who care about this area and have enough education to push some kinds of changes. Don't wait for bar associations to change. They're not going to. Courts aren't going to change. Law schools aren't going to change. It's all the same players. The only change is going to come from us getting pissed. So that is sorry, I was a little ranty. Sorry, everybody. I'm in a ranty place. Matt, I'm going to come back to you after my screed. We're going to have a chat about what's going on in your law firm. Are you unmuted? Say hello.
Now I am. Hello.
Hello, world. This is Matt Rosenthal. So, guys, what we've been doing in these conversations is sort of talking about what different firms are, what's their situation, what are they dealing with, what are they seeing out in the marketplace, how are they adjusting to it, what are they trying. So, Matt, real brief, I just wanted you to tell me a bit about your practice. You're a 2-attorney plus firm in Florida, which we can talk about, but talk to me about your practice areas and sort of broadly the makeup of your team.
Sure. Yeah. So right now it's majority two attorneys, myself and my partner. We're in Orlando, and we have 2 offices in Orlando. One in the Lake Nona area, which is just east of the airport, southeast of the airport, and one in what's called Avalon Park, and it's a little bit more to the east, I guess, in the Orlando area. Our practice is made up of estate planning, wills, trusts, advanced directives, asset protection, all that kind of stuff. Business law, probate, real estate, and starting in June, we're going to also be doing title.
Mm. So you're covering a lot of ground. Are you sort of focused on, like, how are you finding your audience? Often when you see these practices that have a bunch of different practice areas, it's easy to get stuck in this cash flow obsessed, churny practice. How are you making sure that you're building like an audience asset of people that come to you over and over again, so that it's not like criminal law where people show up, they do the thing, and they leave, right?
Yeah, so it's basically we're building relationships in the community, and that's how we're going about doing it. One of the things, I'm originally from New York, so one of the things I noticed when I first got here and opened the practice is that while Orlando's a relatively bigger city than some small towns, it's very segmented. So each little area has its own thing going on, but it's also becoming a place where, let's say, I live in Lake Nona, and that's where our first office was. Everybody who lives in Lake Nona does not want to move outside of it for their services. They're looking for the person that's there.
Right.
Same thing in Avalon Park. They're looking for the person that's there. Nobody really wants to travel too far to get their services. So we're just kind of building our brand within the community. We're part of a number of different chambers. We're on boards of some of the chambers where we're just getting involved so that we're growing the relationships with the people in the community, and that way, they follow us on Facebook and all that kind of stuff, and that way everybody knows, I guess, who we are. So, like, for example, in my community, obviously we're notaries as well because we do estate planning and things like that. So we need to be able to stamp the documents as well. But when a neighbor asks for, hey, I need a notary today, and, we're always available for the community to just come stop by the office. We'll notarize for you.
It's almost like a hyper-local, almost like a rural strategy, right? Like you're the small town lawyer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've had that. I've had that back and forth with a bunch of different rural lawyers about, is a rural town an audience? Is that a definable type of person that all the advantages of picking an audience avatar or whatever they call it, that where they are, you can reach out to them. You're not broadcasting out to the world, but you can target them. A hyperlocal strategy really does make it so you can, go to the bar or to the chamber event, and you're getting the people who are in this sort of small community.
Yeah, exactly. And we're also doing, we're making connections with other individuals in the community that will then just basically send us the business. For example, my partner has made relationships with a couple of different real estate brokers who will then actually have him come in once a month or once every couple of weeks to actually talk to his entire team of agents on some legal issues. So they'll have their team meetings, and he'll be there to answer any legal questions. Right. And so when they think, oh, I have a client that needs an attorney, the only attorney they can think of is us because we're there for all their meetings. So that's just kind of how we're trying to go about just being helpful. We don't charge for going there and sitting down and answering questions. It's just to build the relationships with everybody.
So how's this changed, recently? It sounds like you've got a lot of high-touch community engagement stuff. Obviously, that's changed right now. What are you guys doing to sort of stay in front of people right now?
Yeah, so for our chambers, for the groups that we are in there, a lot of those meetings are now virtual. So I lead one of them for one of the chambers, and so I've been using WebEx for that platform, and I think it's easy for me to mute people, and I can have a lot of people on there without having to pay any fees, I guess. So we're doing that, and we're getting being able to see everybody face to face that way has really been helpful. But there are some other things like the real estate broker, like we're not going to his office and sitting in on the meetings. So those things aren't happening. So it's really just putting out as much information, I think, online for our communities is what we're trying to do as best as possible. Right. So we've really studied up on the PPP and everything like that. So as new things come out, we post about it. We write our articles on it. We share information. If you have questions, how to do something about it, you can come to us.
I'm sorry, is that on your website or like on social media you're sharing these things?
Okay. Both. So we're writing articles that go on our website, but we also share them on Facebook. And we're just there. So if somebody in the community got the loan, doesn't know how to track it, or is not quite understanding what they're supposed to be doing now that they have the money, they can give us a call and we'll try to walk them through it as best as possible, just as a giving back to the community type of thing.
And you can share as much about this as you want, but I'm wondering how the intakes are looking, right? Like what's the flow looking like in terms of new cases? Are there some practice areas that are jumping right now compared to others? Did you see the Clio data showed that there was a jump in estate planning interest and then it sort of tapered off? What are you kind of seeing in terms of trends right now? Yeah,
so absolutely, estate planning has definitely taken off. Basically has kept me very busy in the last few weeks. So much so that normally I had a certain amount of turnaround time for everybody's estate plans, and then we book appointments out for a certain period of time, almost based on client preference, what day you want to come in, and we do it like that. But lately we've had so many so quickly. We've decided that every 2 weeks we've been holding a signing day. Here in Florida, we still have to do our signings in person. So we have them come to one of our offices. We spread them out throughout the day, clean in between, give them pens that they can take home with them, all that kind of stuff. But anybody that contacts us the week before the week that we're doing the signing, up through like the Monday of that week, right, I'm turning around these estate plans for them. Nice. That way that they're getting signed. They're coming to us now because they're fearful and they want to be covered. And so we're getting it done as fast as we really can.
All flat fees, I assume?
Yeah, we do flat fees for estate planning. Some of our other practice areas like real estate have dropped down a little bit. Right. Our business area has decreased some, but we're still seeing some actually disputes between employees and employers, and some 1099s and employers. So we're dealing with those type of disputes, and probate is relatively constant.
People do die relatively constantly. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm wondering, there was this surge of demand. That was what the data showed in the Clio report. There's this surge in demand. And then sort of the pipeline sort of slowed down, and a lot of people started hoarding cash. I shared an article yesterday about how the savings rate in this last, month was just insane, right? The highest level since the early 80s. That people are just hoarding cash right now, and that even the stimulus money that the government sent out, people aren't spending it. So do you have a sense of maybe 2 months from now, sort of how the pipeline, I don't know what the normal turnaround time is for you guys. It sounds like this is pretty click and order and then get what you want back. But do you have any sense of what the pipeline's looking like for the next couple months? Are you projecting that far out?
No, I never really have. For the estate planning practice, it's really been, you look at my calendar 3 weeks out and I might not have anybody, but the week before, right, the next week is now all booked up. Right. But right now we are really we have not seen that decrease yet, at least for our firm. What I did notice, and it was kind of interesting, is the increase happened, but then a lot of the clients that we had signed prior to Orlando shutting down, then they didn't want to come in to actually sign. So I have a handful of clients sitting out there that we're going to get it done right before, but then decided, nope, we're going to sit home and we're going to wait this out and then come in and sign the documents. So that was a very interesting dynamic because their stuff was basically done already,
right?
And then they just didn't want to come in and sign. So, but we have yet to see it really slow down. But I mean, who knows? Right. I mean, next month I might not have any clients. You never know.
Yay! Yeah, it is. It is sort of weird, and I don't know how shut down Florida is. You guys have a Republican governor right now, right?
We're definitely we're pretty open right now. Yeah. About what was it last week? Monday, hair salons and some other things opened up the week before.
Right.
Restaurants and retail at 25%, but now they're talking about gyms reopening next week. So, and beaches have been open, I think, for a while.
Probably just distance. And wrestling. You had to have, your governor said that wrestling had to happen because people are hard up for content. So anything you guys are going to try is something that you have planned, some other way? Has this, created any kind of impetus, activation, energy to get you to try something that you've been talking about, maybe push you over the top to get going, something planned in the next few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that we've been changing a little bit based on just what we're now doing, based on from what we were doing before, are we've always wanted to get into more of putting out webinars and things like that, which we've started to do now. I mean,
educational webinars, like, hey, sign up to learn how to protect your assets in an apocalypse, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Those types of things. Where my partner's doing more Facebook Lives, just on updates in the law for our for our neighbors and our communities that are happening here locally.
Oh, man.
Just things like that.
As associated as you are with the chamber, right? Like that'd be a great avenue for saying, we're providing this series of webinars for chamber members. That's a really good point of contact.
Yeah, and so we basically we do that. So we'll either share it with them through their Facebook pages, on their websites. Some of our chambers have places where we can actually put these events up on their calendars, but we'll pass it along to them afterwards as well. Other things that we're also doing is I'm thinking about keeping some of these the availability of these virtual meetings, because we've always had the ability to do this, but for some reason we have always wanted in person. And I guess, and for some things that is easier, when they're across from you, you can win them over a little bit better. Once they hand you the credit card, it's harder to walk away than when you have to send them a payment link to do it. Right. But for some people, that what we've really noticed is, and we'll probably continue doing is when you have somebody that is at work and can't make it to the office. So you're always like, no, you got to make it during my hours because I'm not coming in after hours to see you guys.
And I'm wondering if that's even true, right? Like that thing of, I need them in front of me so that I can sell that. Because you know how when you go into a store and the clerk says, can I help you? And just reflexively, without even thinking, you're like, no, thanks, I'm good. I wonder if people in the room, to feel smart, to feel like they don't make rash decisions or whatever, are like, no, I got to go home and think about this. And that's when you lose that. I mean, maybe that's a 50-50 thing and it'll wash. I'd be curious to know how consumer behavior works with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I've noticed, I have a relatively good close rate when I'm in person. It has been pretty consistent, though, online as well. But just being able to say, okay, so you're at work today, you can't make it in, but your significant other can make it into the office. Right. Maybe that one comes into the office and we do it, and we can, we'll do it on your lunch break. Take 30 minutes and just join us, on your phone and be part of the consultation. So we don't have to wait and do it at 6:00 at night.
It's so funny because it used to be like, I don't get on the phone with people because I'm me and how dare you. And now we're like, this is actually way better than than having to set up the coffee machine for no reason. Well, that's very cool. I'm glad that you're trying those things. I'm really interested in doing these kind of informational webinars. I suspect that wouldn't work as well if you've got a consumer level practice. So, unless you had an institution to go to that has a mailing list that could send out and say, hey, register for this webinar. But, if you can deal with chambers or with, different states have different rules with how you can solicit in this way. But if you can do it with different chambers and organizations like that, that's really smart. So if people want to follow up with you, maybe share ideas with how they're using video, for these webinars, find out how you're doing it, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Sure, you can email me at mrosenthal@rosenthalmeyer.com, or you can just find me on the Facebook page, Matt Rosenthal, or the Lawyer Forward page, because I'm a member. So
that's right. And guys, you can have like this thread underneath. You can post comments and questions and thoughts for the rest of forever. That's what's great about these things. So if you guys want to follow up with Matt, we'll both be there. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody. Remember that on Sunday, Nick and I are doing Ask Twinsies. You just have to ask questions, no matter how serious or stupid they are. I guarantee we will give terrible advice in return. Just use the hashtag AskTwinsies. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a good night. Thanks again, Matt.
Thank you.